Brethren, you're going to hear in the next few days, starting on Monday, following through the feast, a number of messages about the meaning of the holy days, about the meaning of the feast, how those meanings pertain to you and I, and there's going to be a lot of information that you're going to need to collect and digest and do something with. I wanted to take a little different approach this afternoon and make my comments just really basic, fundamental, pragmatic, in the sense that these are experiences that I have had during the holy days, specifically the Feast of Tabernacle, and to try to show the real effect that they had on, one, my understanding of the holy days, but then the practical application of what it was that I ran onto. You know, the holy days have multiple purposes, but I think that one of the purposes, and it's just one of them, is that the holy days, and again I keep coming back to the idea of the Feast of Tabernacles, that they provide a common experience to a group of people for whom the pendulum of life experiences swing very wide. We could do a survey of the folks in this room, and each one of us, our life experiences are going to be vastly different. And when we think about it, but for our being called into the church, brethren, likely few of us would have ever met one another, and very unlikely that our paths would have crossed whatsoever. And so, perhaps just a couple of comments about how a kid from the panhandle of Texas, Hardeman County, you can look it up on Google Maps if you want, later though, not right now, and how it is that what he experienced may, in fact, relate to something that you experience or will experience in the future. You know, when I came in to the church, I was 20. I lived on my parents' ranch in Hardeman County, which is in the Panhandle, the southern end of the Texas Panhandle. Closest church was 210 miles away in Amarillo, Texas. And it was, for me, the going to church and becoming associated with the Church of God was especially that first year, was just a year of first experiences. For example, I remember the first service I ever went to. Brethren, I didn't know what to expect. I really didn't. My background was with a old line Protestant Southern church congregation that I knew what to expect there. But when I walked through the doors of not a church building, but the Amarillo Community Center, I really did not know what to expect. And so, okay, how does this work? What do we do? I remember thinking, well, when we pray, are we going to kneel down, or is that going to happen, or are you going to raise hands? I mean, that was really foreign to me, that thought and that idea. So what is it that I was going to be facing here? What was going to happen? Well, come to find out, it was really pretty routine and wasn't anything so exotic. I remember, though, I tell you, the very first hymn I ever sang and ever heard, and I think it was probably a good hymn to start with, was what? Blessed and happy is the man. I remember that to this day. And so it was something that, again, you just remember these things. Another first was the first feast that I went to. Leading up to the feast, I would ask different people, well, what do we do at the feast? Is it just mostly a situation where we will go and kind of have church services like this, except just more people? What really is going to take place there? And it was interesting. People had a difficulty in describing it to me and explaining, how it worked or how it worked for them. Oh yeah, they said, yeah, in a sense, yes, it is an expanded church service, but you'll see there's more to it, and typically a conversation, you'll just have to go and see for yourself. So I did, and but I went having really no idea what to expect or what was expected of me. And so I remember I was going to the Feast of Tabernacles, and it was going to be in a place called Big Sandy, Texas, in another place on the Ambassador College campus called the Piney Woods, and I was going to be camping. There's two big things happened right there, brethren. First of all, I'm from West Texas. That was in East Texas. I was a little careful and cautious about the idea of going anywhere east of Dallas. Second thing, I was going to be camping. I've never camped in my life up to that point. My family never camped. It was just never something that we did. It was just not, it never hit the agenda for us at any level. So I was going to be camping, and thankfully, a couple of guys in Amarillo who really knew what to do and how to do it correctly, they invited me, and I was able to stay with them. And actually, it worked out real well, and I certainly appreciated their generosity. And it was really the start of a lifetime of experiences that I owe to the church and to the Feast of Tabernacles. One thing that I'll tell you about before we move on, I remember driving down there, got on Highway 80. Somebody said, be sure out of Dallas, take Highway 80. You stay on that, it'll take you right to Big Sandy. So here I go. Brethren, it started raining in Dallas, and the further east I went, the harder it rained the entire way. Of course, in my mind, I was thinking, rain, camping, oh, how's this gonna work? Brethren, it rained the entire way until I got just outside of the thriving metropolis of Big Sandy, Texas. Most incredible thing I'd ever seen up to that point. There was a perfect break in the clouds above Big Sandy, extending all the way to the campus. Bright big sunshine pouring down with dark rain clouds gathered around it, and it just struck me. It was a perfect circle. Yes, I was impressed. I saw that, okay, wow, all right, this has some potential. Wow, cool. Brethren, out of these things came practical lessons. And when we look at the feasts and the holy days, I wanted to talk a bit about them, as I mentioned, because among us, there may be some new folks in the congregation for whom this feast, is their first time. And for those of us long-term members, who knows? It may be a fun thing to remember experiences of your own. But brethren, one thing I really want us to get out of this, and it's not going to be a deep scriptural treatment of the subject, but the one thing I want us to get out of it is to get the most out of the holy days, to get the most out of the Feast of Tabernacles. We need to focus, appreciate, and believe in the meaning of the holy days in the feast. Let me repeat that because it's important. We need to focus on, appreciate, and believe the meaning of the holy days and the feasts to get the most out of it. Brethren, there is so much noise in our lives. We all know it. It's hard to keep our minds on the holy days. And we get excited about going to the feast. But think about it too, brethren. We're also having to contend with getting time off. Bills continue. There's stuff to do. There's things to organize. And it's not just organized to get there. You got to think 2 and 3 and 4 weeks ahead because you got to prepare for what comes later. So there is a constant competition for your thought processes, trying to snatch those away from the faith that you need to follow through and to appreciate God's plans. You know, God's plan in these holy days, they've been called shadows. There's something that point forward, point ahead. Colossians 2, verse 16, says, "Let no man therefore judge you in meat or drink or in respect of the holy days, new moons, or the Sabbath days." Then in verse 17, Paul said, "Which are a shadow of things to come." Paul also addressed this subject in an interesting way in focusing on the priests and the old covenant. And when he said in Hebrews 8, verse 5, just breaking into the theme, he said that the priests and the old covenant were examples and shadows of heavenly things. In other words, they point to something, and they point forward to something that is going to happen. So the holy days are simply a shadow of future events. Romans 4, verse 17, a very common, very well-remembered scripture where it says that God calls things which do not exist as though they did, and that's what he's doing with the holy days. He's telling us these exist. They are a future, and that future is very real. Brethren, when I say focus, appreciate, and believe in the meaning of the feast and the holy days, one example that I'd like to give you is that we need to practice seeing the holy days and their meaning in our lives. Let me give you an example of what I mean. A few years ago, an aunt passed away, and I was asked to be a pallbearer for the aunt, and I was pleased to do so. Went through the service in the church, went out to the cemetery, and I had the service out there. And we, when the service was over, pallbearers got into a limousine to take us back to our cars. And I got in the back seat next to a very old friend of mine. We had known each other since we were about 5. And as we drove through the cemetery, there was one grave that was especially well cared for. And my friend turned and watched as we drove by that grave. That happened to be the grave of his son, who had died recently in a car accident. You know, brethren, I was sitting there thinking, with what you and I know, information given to us about from the feast. And I wanted so badly to reach across that seat and point to that grave and tell him that grave is not the end of the story for you and your family. And I know it, and here's why. That I learned from the Feast of Tabernacles. Perhaps it wouldn't have been appropriate. I didn't do it anyway. Bluntly, I didn't have the courage to pull the trigger. I just didn't. But I know from what we know about the fall of holy days that that family is going to be together again. I know it. And when we see the holy days in combination with Ezekiel 37, it should be real close to you and I and ring home a meaning that God's plan is a sincere and deep hope for the future. The feast also, I've learned, is a tremendous opportunity, or a tremendous time of opportunity, pardon me. First of all, an opportunity for renewal, just absolutely getting away, opportunity to break out of my spiritual routine sometimes that kind of hamstrings you. Ecclesiastes 4, verse 15, Solomon was really kind of a downer on this, but he pointed to a truism. I consider all the living which walk under the sun, skipping ahead to verse 16, there is no end of all people, even of all that have been before them. They also that come after them shall not rejoice in him. Surely this is vanity and a vexation of spirit. Solomon wasn't a happy camper. And we know, too, by Christ's own example, that things just get burdensome, and we need to break away and step out of the momentum of the situation. Mark 6, verse 45. This is after Christ preached and then fed 5,000 people, the loaves and the fishes. We remember that story. Mark 6, verse 45, and straightway he constrained his disciples to get into the ship and to go to the other side before Bethsaida, while he sent away the people. And when he had sent them away, he departed unto the mountain to pray. The feast will give you time to yourself, time for prayer, time to collect your thoughts for couples and families. It gives you the opportunity to run interference for a spouse and give them some time away for themselves. Of course, the messages are always reminders of that. It is an opportunity also to reboot and take inventory and to reestablish personal priorities and break out of habitual thinking. It's a time of examination, an excellent time of examination. Paraphrasing, not paraphrasing, but actually kind of probably taking it somewhat out of context. A philosopher of old, Socrates, said the unexamined life is not worth living. Well, 1 Corinthians 11, verse 28, Paul said, let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of the cup, of course thinking about Passover. But it extends to what we're discussing now. Verse 29, for he that eats and drinks unworthy eats and drinks damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. For this cause many are sick and weakly among you, and many sleep. For if we would judge ourselves, we should not be judged. The feast gives us that opportunity. Brethren, also gives us an opportunity to do fun things that you would not have the time to do, or perhaps even the financial resources to do. Remember, it's already been quoted once, Deuteronomy 14:26, whatsoever your heart desires. Remember what that says? Keep your tithe, and you're given free rein to spend it on whatever is appropriate and whatever you desire. Do you like traveling? Brethren, we could take a poll of people in this congregation or any congregation virtually in the world, and you would find a group of the most seasoned travelers of any single group that you would ever find. Brethren, there are rock stars that don't have the level of substantive travel experience as many of church members' children do. We are well-traveled and well-seasoned in that way. And that's possible because of the feast. A fun time, and God wants us to have those things. But there's things there to learn. We also have things like, do you want to spend your money this way? Special places to eat. Places that wouldn't otherwise be available. I remember years ago, went to the feast in Victoria. We stopped over in Vancouver and took a couple of days there and toured around. And we went to eat in a restaurant called the Observatory. And it was on top of Grouse Mountain, which to get there, you had to take a ski lift, and it went and went and went. And we got up there, and the whole back side of this restaurant was open glass, beautiful, and it looked right out over Vancouver and that Bay Area, and we watched the sun go down. Brethren, a guy from Hardeman County just doesn't have many of those experiences. But it was fun, and it was given to me again through the feast. Recreation, you enjoy recreation? Well, now's your time. Go hang gliding. You want to ride an elephant? I can't count how many pictures I've seen of people who have come back from the feast showing me pictures of elephants they had ridden. It's also, with regard to the special things, it's a good opportunity for generosity. Opportunity to give gifts and share with people because you have a reason to do so. Brethren, you also have an opportunity to meet people who you would otherwise simply not know. They just wouldn't be there. Remember that old thing with Kevin Bacon where he talked about 6 points of separation, and you could track down anyone in the world that through 6 points of contact, you would know virtually everybody else in the world. Brethren, we don't have that problem. We can do it in 1, 2, max, and track down people in every country, literally worldwide. That's how broad that blessing goes. We literally have friends all over the world. I remember coming back from the feast, and I'd tell co-workers about some of my experiences. Brethren, they just could not believe that everybody I met, well, how do you know these people? Well, I owe that to the Church of God, and I owe that to these wonderful feast experiences. And brethren, we have, in an interesting way, the opportunity to enrich other people's lives by our own experiences. Let me explain that. I know for a fact that people in my family who are now pretty well traveled would never have left and taken what they saw was a huge risk had I not done it first. Now, some of these folks have traveled to Europe, they've traveled other countries. They wouldn't have stepped out of this country without my experience. And whether they realize it or not, it was kind of a backhanded gift to them from the feast. Brethren, we also, on this, I've learned that the feast has given me tremendous opportunity for training. Tremendous opportunity. First and foremost, budgeting. Simply budgeting. And don't misunderstand. Budgeting is not a bad word. We know how it works. We apply it. And God uses that procedure to help us to enjoy the feast. Let me go now, Deuteronomy 14:24. Deuteronomy 14:24. And if the way is too long, we're talking about keeping second tithe, and if your cattle or your wheat is too far to lug those across the country into another country, it says, verse 25, then you shall turn it into money, bind the money in your own hand, and you shall go to the place which the Lord chooses. Verse 26, and you shall use the money for whatsoever your soul desires. You like steak? You like that special lamb chop? It's all available, and it's all there. It's all there because we have learned budgeting works, and it opens the doors for us. A tremendous gift, brethren. You know others that have that same opportunity too, if they knew how to budget. Also, when we travel and keep the feast, it teaches us how to function outside of our comfort zones. We learn to navigate airports, taxis. When we're in countries that nobody seems to speak English, even though all the tourist guides say, yeah, everybody there speaks English. Okay, where are they? I've had that experience. I remember, in fact, thinking about getting outside of your comfort zone. Went to Germany for one feast. I was with a group of 3 others. And we landed, got the car, and then drove right off to a little town called Darmstadt. And we already had reservations in an old castle. So we went to the castle, checked in, and then we wanted to go out to eat because all of us had been on that plane for hours. And so we went out to eat, found a restaurant, and sat down and ate, had a nice meal. But there was an uh-oh. See, at that time, I'm kind of showing my age, at that time credit cards were available, but they were not that widely accepted. And so kind of knowing that, having been warned of that, and not wanting to take just a bunch of raw cash, I went and got traveler's checks. Everybody else got traveler's checks. Because, according to the advertisements, accepted worldwide. So we sat there, we have this wonderful meal. Came time to pay the bill. Bill came. I pulled out my little plastic billfold of traveler's checks. The waiter said, "We don't accept traveler's checks." Uh-oh. I looked around, and everybody else had traveler's checks. No, we hadn't had time to do an exchange and get any marks. But now they say that they're negotiable worldwide. And I said, maybe, but we don't accept traveler's checks. What's funny about that, this was the same guy that a few minutes before could barely speak English, but right then, he spoke real good English. So, here we go. Brethren, I wasn't sure what to do. Okay, God, this is one of those experiences I need a little help with. So I looked around the restaurant, and I thought to myself, is there any possibility that there could be another church member in this restaurant? I mean, it was off the beaten track. We hadn't talked to anybody who had our same itinerary. There was a couple sitting over from us and had a child, I think a little boy, if I remember correctly. And I said, wait a minute, let me try something. So I went over to this couple and I introduced myself, said that I'm here with friends for a church gathering, and do I know you? And they said, I don't think we've met, but are you with the Church of God? I said, yes, we are. And so we introduced ourselves. I explained the circumstance and situation, hoping they didn't have traveler's checks. And I explained it. He said, look, I understand. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of the bill. And I said, if you could, then we'll catch up with you at the site and repay you. And so I forget exactly how that worked out. He was very kind. A new experience, brother, where you kind of have to step out on faith and take a chances. So that's what we did. Brethren, navigating travel that's provided by the feast helps us build cultural and social awareness. First time I ever stepped out of an airplane in Amman, Jordan, Bangkok, Narita, Japan, I looked around and that old saying, you'll remember too, Al, you're not in Kansas anymore. Different people. That's for foreign travel. Domestically, you learn too, because situations come up. Don't let them just slide by without gleaning a lesson from them. there is a situation that came up at the site in Tucson. A gentleman who had come to Tucson. Apparently he loved to play golf, and in his home area played a lot of it. He was a nice guy. He drove his work truck to the feast. Okay, wouldn't be a problem. But as a special treat for himself, he booked an opportunity to play golf at a really high-end golf club, and he was out a lot of money. It was pretty expensive. For me at the time, it seemed like a really expensive golf game. And so when it came time, threw his clubs in the truck, and off he went, got to the front gate. I'm sorry, sir. You cannot drive that truck into these grounds. Well, what do you mean? I've got a reservation to play golf. Be that as it may, you are not driving that truck onto our grounds. We don't allow anything, we don't allow work equipment onto our grounds. Well, I don't know for sure how it worked out. But, brethren, it was a learning moment. It was something that he learned from, certainly looking over the man's shoulder, I kind of learned from it. It's one of those things where when we operate in society, there are certain things society expects of us. And if we're going to participate, for example, playing golf in a high-end golf course, you got to do it their way. It's the way it works. And sometimes we need to learn those kind of lessons. You know, Paul talked specifically about the issue of social convention and how he turned it and used it to his favor. 1 Corinthians 9, verse 19. 1 Corinthians 9, verse 19. For though I be free from all men, he was a Roman citizen. He could do anything he wanted. That's what he was saying or indicating. Yet have I made myself servant to all, that I may gain more. Unto the Jews I become a Jew, that I may gain the Jews. Unto them under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them under the law. To them who are without the law, as without the law, not being without law to God, but under the law of Christ, that I might gain them that are without the law. Unto the weak I became weak, that I might gain the weak. I am made all things to all men, that I may by all means save some. Lesson here: if you want to play golf, dress the part, and apparently drive the right truck. You know, brethren, just as an aside, this is important enough that corporations, and I know large white-stocking law firms, they spend lots of money training their new managers and their new associates in how to conduct themselves socially. It's that important. You know, brethren, the feast serves that to us on a silver platter. We just need to use it. There are other opportunities too. Opportunities to take the appropriate steps to make other lives richer, easier, and fuller. Service is important to God. Came up in the announcements. Matthew 20, verse 26, breaking into the context, whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister. Verse 27, and whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered to, but to minister. Brethren, service at the feast is needed at many levels, and it's gender and age neutral. And the church volunteers needed throughout the feast site. Parking, very definitely if you're going to Branson, obviously is needed. Ushering, counting holy day offering, choir, special music, all of that. Brethren, let me circle back, though, to this parking. Mr. Burnett triggered a thought and a memory. A few years ago, we went to Pigeon Forge for the feast. And one night, in fact, I think it was even the opening night. Again, what is the rain thing? It rained. It rained hard. The parking lot outside of the convention center was a swamp. It just was. So I drove up, let the family out, and of course they took the one and only umbrella. And so I drove and I found a parking spot and I grabbed it. One of the neatest things happened. I realized, okay, no umbrella, just bite the bullet. You're going to be wet. There's nothing you can do about it. So I opened the door, and two little girls, like this, two little girls pop up out of nowhere, and they had these huge umbrellas and these big smiles on their face, and they were laughing. Mister, can we help you? Yes, ma'am, you sure can. I would appreciate it. They saw me all the way in, laughing and talking, explaining who they were, who their mom and dad was, and just having a big time. They got me inside. I turned to say thank you, but they were gone. They had already headed out to rescue somebody else. What a fun memory. How much fun was that? That's an opportunity, brother. An opportunity, especially if you're going to Branson. So, if you get the chance, volunteer once or twice. But brethren, if you volunteer, show up on time, and stay until the job is done. That always helps if you're a volunteer. Brethren, that's serving in mass, but there's also the thing about serving individuals. When direct service to people sometimes becomes kind of a two-way street. It's kind of a balancing act between convenience and inconvenience. But a servant, to be a true servant, it is easier to help, of course, when things are convenient. That's true. But at times, it's not convenient. But the commitment still exists. And that's when your commitment to service gets tested. Again, something to watch for. And let me say this. If you're the one being served, there's a flip side to that coin. If you're the one being served, do all you can to make helping you as easy as possible. Be ready when the time comes. If there's expenses, pay your part. And by the way, that's not necessarily in money every time either. There's things you can do to make other people's lives easier and to show your true appreciation. Another thing regarding service. Brethren, each of us are going to have to come in contact with business people and vendors. It's just the way it works. They're just people. Matthew 19:19 tells us, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's the approach we need to take. And so I'll just say that not all business people are thieves. Sometimes business people make honest mistakes in their dealings. Our first response should be, okay, how do we fix this? We shouldn't jump immediately to anger. It's probably not necessary. Brethren, there's also the service to our families. Ephesians 6, verse 4. And you fathers, or parents, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. Brethren, impatience is a common threat to families and friendships. Impatience is a common threat to families and friendships. We need to watch it. Also, for parents, absence is just as much of a threat. You can be present, but you're not there. Need to be careful. Parents, not just the fathers, need to leave work at work. You stay away from the work calls. Don't accept them. There's been studies, interesting studies. Daniel Goleman, author of Emotional Intelligence and Social Intelligence, did a deep study, participated in a deep study of this thing called multitasking. Bottom line, he found that engagement requires full attention. There is no such thing as multitasking. He just said, all you're doing is multiple things halfway. Relationships require full engagement of the parties involved. One cannot focus on serving loved ones if you're working. But Al, we're at the feast. We're standing in line to go to a ride. We're doing all kinds of things. I'm there. Brethren, I cannot count the number of meetings over the year that has involved somebody on a conference call. One guy, I remember, involved people who were supposed to be on vacation. One guy was standing in line at Disney World with his family on a call with us that could have just waited. It happens. It's not the physical location. It's what you're connected to mentally. So we need to be careful. Goldman made one interesting observation. It said that the largest number of neural synapses in the human brain are devoted to recognizing smiles. Bang! They just light up by the thousands in the human brain when they see smiles. Kind of makes me think that God wants us to associate with and be happy, comforting, and engaged while we're with others. Wouldn't you think? Brethren, God's holy days are a tremendous gift to the church. And ultimately, they're going to be the same gift to the world. No scheme no scheme that man has devised even comes close to God's plan. 1 Corinthians 2, verse 9, but as it is written, eyes not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God has prepared for them that love him. God gives us tangible opportunities today, now, for spiritual renewal, to reboot emotionally, opportunity to do fun stuff, travel, and just play if you want to, and to make new friends. And opportunity through all of that, opportunity for training and grounding in social maturity. Brethren, we owe all of that to our calling into the fullness of Jesus Christ. Folks, have a good Holy Day season. See you back here, many of you, on Monday. If we don't, hope everybody has a great Feast of Tabernacles. Thank you.